And that's one of the things that sticks out in my memory as well, because we went through the back doors of the school to get to that parking lot and then over to the church. And I remember I was walking, and the walkway from the school to the church was lined with SWAT team members. Up until that point, I hadn't seen anything that would tell me the situation I was experiencing was real. So that really made the situation feel more real to me as we were doing that. Hello and welcome to Mindshift, a PLCS Empowerment Collective podcast. My name is Christopher and I am one of your hosts.
And I'm Deb. I'm your other host.
And Deb, today our roles are going to change just slightly, and I'm sure we'll get to that here in a minute. But we're going to be talking about a pretty sensitive topic. We're going to talk about school shootings today. And one of the things that had me thinking about this topic is my son did a fire drill for the first time. And I know a fire drill is not the same thing, but he was so excited when I picked him up to show me where he's supposed to go in case of a fire outside of the building. And it just got me thinking about the different ways that we help to train and educate students to protect themselves and each other in crisis situations. And it got me wondering, when is he going to do his first active shooter drill? And it's kind of it's a scary thought, but it's also important.
Yes. I think it is important. I was also thinking maybe we want to let everybody know that we are going to talk about your personal experience with the school shooting. And I think that could bring up some emotions for parents too. So just so that we're aware of that.
Yeah, so I realized the other day when we were talking about potentially using this as a topic that I haven't really talked about it before. This will be my first time talking about it, and it'll be interesting to see what recollections I have of the day.
Yes, not just your memory, but also your emotional experience, if that comes up at all, which it might, especially because you haven't really talked about it publicly before. So that day, if you could take us back, it was January 5th, 2011. Is that right?
Yep. We're actually right on the cusp of the 15-year mark. So It'll be 15 years here in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so can you talk to our listeners about where you were, what your role was, what was happening that day?
Yeah, so to kind of set the scene, in 2011, I was in, that would have been my third year of teaching. And I was a teacher. I was a high school English teacher in the Omaha metro area. And I loved my school. I loved my community there. And I remember that day, it was the first day of second semester for us. First day of second semester during that school year. And my department, we all had lunch at the same time. So our lunch was at 12:43, and we had dismissed kids for lunch for our lunchtime. And I remember that day I went to the bathroom before going into the English department office, which is where we all eat lunch together. And I was in the bathroom when someone, and I can't remember who, but someone came over the PA system in the school and called a code red, and you could just tell that it wasn't a drill, that something was happening in the school.
So tell us more about that code red. I would imagine it covers more than a shooting.
Yeah, code red was anything happening in the school that would require us to basically hunker down. You look out in the hallway, bring in any kids in the hallway, pull your classroom door closed, locked, lights out, and you just hunker down in the classroom until the code red is cleared. So that code red was shortly after 12:45, maybe a little bit before 1 o'clock. And I went back into my classroom, and again, no context for what's happening. You assume the worst, and I didn't know what to do. So I actually hid under my desk in my classroom. My teacher's desk was kind of in the far corner of the room. And so I went over there and I hid under my desk, and I had my phone with me. And I remember trying to check my phone to see what was happening, and my phone wouldn't work. And so I couldn't send or receive text messages. I couldn't pull up a web browser. I couldn't do any of those things because you come to learn later that the signals were jammed. And so I couldn't get any service to my phone because of the emergency situation that was happening. So I felt pretty in the dark about what was going on. I was by myself, which in some ways I'm grateful for because I feel lucky that I wasn't responsible for a classroom full of students. It was just me. And so that was all that I had to worry about. Cause I mean, I was young and a relatively new teacher. And I think that would have been really difficult to manage an experience if I was also doing my best to protect a group of students. So I was hiding under my desk, and I remember I waited there for what felt like forever before I even felt comfortable reaching up to my desk to try to find my laptop. Because I thought, when I couldn't get anything going on my phone and I didn't know what was happening, I thought if I can get my laptop, then I can check my email or check the news and see if I can find out anything that's going on. I didn't have anything in my email, but I started searching the news, and that's how I found out what was going on, that there were reports of shots fired at the school. And that's how I learned what was happening.
I'm imagining when you're there and you're under your desk and you're all alone that I understand why you would not want to be responsible for students at that time. At the same time, though, I wonder how isolated you must have felt. I mean, when you think about putting your hand up to grab your laptop and you don't know what's out there,
Mhm.
that must have felt like that really alone.
It was, and especially not being able to even text or anything like that, um, really, really increased that feeling of isolation, and also you lose sense of time. Like I don't know what time it is right now. Like I don't know how long I've been here. I don't know what's going on. I do remember I got really startled at one point because I heard a rattling of my doorknob of my classroom, and it scared me
Of
because I
course.
didn't know what it was. And, you know, I learned later that that was the SWAT team coming around and checking for any unlocked doors. So that really caught me off guard. But in that time, they did report on the news that the shooter was no longer at the school. And I knew that my friends, my department, were in our department office for lunch. And that was not that far from my classroom. And so when I saw that reported in the news, I waited yet after that, but at a certain point, the isolation was too much for me. And so when I weighed the risks of continuing to stay there by myself or leaving my classroom to go the 10 yards to the English office, I opted to go to the English office.
Christopher, my heart, I mean, just listening to you talk about it, I can feel my own anxiety come up. I don't know if that's how it feels for you, but when I think about you being in that room and you're alone, and then you make a decision to leave that classroom, not knowing for sure what you're going to encounter. Were you hearing things during that time period? Like shots or screaming or
No,
any?
there wasn't anything. I didn't hear anything during that time period. And it's a big school, and all of the violence that happened in the front office. And so I was pretty far removed from the front office, my location in the school was. And once we went into that code red, it was silent in the school, completely silent. And so
How
that,
long? Well,
go ahead.
how long were you in your room alone?
I was alone maybe for 1 to 2 hours, but again, it felt like such a long time. And still wondering, are our students safe? Are my friends safe? We have reports of people being shot, of adults being shot. And so who are we talking about? What's their condition? And so I had all of those questions. And even when I got into the English office, the details they had were just as scarce as what I had known. And so we were all kind of blind to the situation together, but at least we were together in that space. And I know that, again, just brought me a huge sense of relief. And we continued to wait until we got word that it was time to begin reunification. And I remember that they dismissed and guided students over there first so they could be reunified with their families, and then dismissed staff. And that's one of the things that sticks out in my memory as well, because we went through the back doors of the school to get to that parking lot and then over to the church. And I remember I was walking with one of my closest friends, and still one of my closest friends, and she and I were walking together, and the walkway from the school to the church was lined with SWAT team members. I think it made real the situation, because up until that point, I hadn't seen anything that would tell me the situation I was experiencing was real. So that really made the situation feel more real to me as we were doing that.
So now you're at the reunification site at the church,
hmm
and then what happens?
I actually don't remember. I
None of
don't
it.
remember anything from the reunification site. I don't remember how I got home that day. I mean, I assume I drove, but I don't remember.
You don't remember talking with anybody and them sort of saying, "Okay, now you can go, you're safe."
I just remember walking over, and then
And what about
that's
when
it.
they told you what actually happened? When did you learn the facts of the shooting? Was it then?
It was later that night or the next morning that I learned the extent of the attack on the school. I mean, the news and what I heard from others definitely filled in. Hearing others' experiences, there were people that did hear the shots happening in the office. And I remember one of my colleagues was actually on the phone with the office at the time and heard the shots on the phone, and then just kind of heard the chaos erupt in that moment. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of gaps filled in from what others experience, but when talking to you about it today, I just really wanted to focus on what I remember from my
Yeah.
lived experience, because that's what I can do most authentically.
So I know we want to talk about what's happened with schools in terms of how those events are handled today, because that's what, 15 years ago
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
And also how communication has changed and how we notify parents and how we protect students, all of those things in your role as a director of communications and also one of the leaders of the district incident management team. If we were to have a school shooting in our district today, you would be one of the leaders managing that. What worked then that we still do today? What didn't that has changed? Can you kind of talk us through that a little bit?
Thinking about what we know now and how the experience was then, I I know that at the time, I felt like everything was managed appropriately. Um, I didn't feel myself wanting or lacking anything, but we also just didn't know as much at the time. I would say that preparation for events like that was not as prevalent as it is
Okay.
now. One of the things that has really come through in the time since then is work done by a group called the I Love You Guys Foundation. The I Love You Guys Foundation was started by two parents who lost their daughter in a school shooting, and the last text that she sent her parents said, "I love you guys."
Gosh, Christopher, I didn't know that that was why. I have wondered where did that name come from?
Yes, so they started this foundation to help do more of that prevention work and do more of that preparation work for incidents in schools. And so they have developed what's used nationally now and is known as the Standard Response Protocol. And the Standard Response Protocol is used to respond to a number of different incidents in schools, whether you have EMS being called to the school for a medical emergency, or there are tornadoes in the area, or there are acts of school violence happening. All of that now, we have guidance from the I Love You Guys Foundation through their standard response protocol. And after that was so widely adopted, they realized that there was also a need for standardization of the reunification process.
So, Christopher, as we reach the end here, I do want to ask you one final question. What gives you hope about our ability to protect kids while preserving the joy of going to school?
I thought about this because I knew the question was coming as the co-host of this podcast. I know that that's how we like to wrap up. And so I was thinking about this and thinking about what does give me hope about it. And one of the things that I don't remember from my own experience is what we call response and recovery looked like for students and for staff. I don't remember feeling like I didn't have support, but I know that now in schools, psychological first aid and response and recovery following any type of crisis incident in schools is something that's much more prevalent. And really, that's what gives me hope about situations like this. I would love to be able to say that situations like this are happening less, or we've done more to prevent things like this. And maybe someday we will be able to say that. But right now, I'm hopeful because we're better prepared to help people when things like this happen.
I absolutely agree, and as somebody who's been involved with that team, I've noticed that our team here has been so supportive and so committed to trying to support students and staff and parents. So I agree with you, Christopher, that that's made a huge difference. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can visit our website at plcsschools.org/Mindshift for more content, and join us next week. Thank you.